This is the Solar Smart podcast from solarsmart.ie with your host, Morgan Pierce.
Hello and welcome to the Solar Smart podcast, looking at solar energy and sustainability from a business point of view. Today, we're joined by Lloyd Hewson, Head of Operations at Nourish, Ireland's leading natural health and wellness retailer. Having been with Nourish for over 25 years, Lloyd has seen the industry evolve firsthand. He's here to talk about the operational side of health and wellness and how a retail leader like Nourish balances growth with a keen interest in the environment. Lloyd, thanks for joining us today. So, maybe by way of introduction to the audience, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe some of what you're passionate about in life, and also tell us about Nourish. I think it's a name brand here in Ireland, but for those people who may not know it, give us a little bit of a background about the company and what it's all about.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Morgan. Yeah, so my name is Lloyd Hewson and I work in Nourish, and I've worked in Nourish for this year, it'll be 25 years, so quite some time in various different roles. Started out in our warehouse and then worked in our shop. I actually did shop and warehouse part-time, and then became a manager of one of the stores and then another store and so forth, and then moved into the head office environment where I've worked in a few different roles in HR and training, and then moved into operations where I am now. And then as for Nourish itself, we've been going since 1986, so 40 years this year, which is pretty huge. And then we have stores, we have 21 stores spread out all over Ireland, predominantly in Dublin, but we have 3 in Cork. And then we also have Limerick, Kerry, Galway and Naas as well. So we provide health foods. So that would be like organic foods, supplements, natural skincare. And the focus is on providing sustainable products to our customers. So sustainability is very much at the core of everything that we do. Our customers are looking for sustainable products, environmentally friendly, earth-friendly products. They are looking to purchase stuff that is low impact on the environment. And we're also all into it. I got into it myself. I was a vegan and very into the food side of it initially. I'm no longer a vegan, but all of us that work in Nourish have an interest in it and a passion in it. And it's a retail sector, but it is a very interesting retail sector because, there's just so much to learn, so many different products and different benefits and such as well.
I'm sure Nourish has grown and become a lot more kind of relevant because people are significantly more health conscious than they were. 40 years ago, it must have been just a brand new concept to have, particularly here in Ireland. And how much has the brand changed since you've been there for the last 25 years? And can you see the audience growing and the appetite for the kinds of products that Nourish offers? Is that becoming bigger and bigger?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I started in, 2001. Even within that period of time between now and then, there's been absolutely dramatic change in the interest. But going back to the roots, I heard that the stories of how it very much was just, bags of brown rice and very just really a whole food store with, homeopathic remedies and supplements, natural skincare. But it very much would have been an unusual place for people to visit. And especially in Ireland, we were maybe a little bit behind the likes of the United States and Australia and other countries and other places in Europe. We might have been a bit slower to adopt those interests initially, but yeah, it's very much mainstream now. Sustainability and the environment are huge factors, especially in the younger generations as well. It's really important to them to look after the planet, look after themselves, and make sure that we're here for as long as we can be, and the planet is here for as long as it can be. So, but yeah, you've really seen it shift from being a bit of an obscure, out there concept to something that's very mainstream. And we also now are within Dunn stores with our concessions since 2017. It was the first store in Cornell's Court, and the customer in the supermarket, they're looking for that type of thing. Everyone is, it's much more mainstream.
Can I ask, I wasn't going to bring up Dunn stores, but now that you've brought it up, because I shop in Colonel's Court and that's where I go to my local Nourish spot. But
yeah,
in the 21 stores, is that include the ones that are in Dunn's, or are those outside of the 21?
Yes, we have our own standalone stores, as we call them. They're kind of internal jargon really probably. But yeah, our standalone stores, which are owned and operated, well, all of them are owned and operated by us, but they're, the customer is shopping with Nourish. Whereas when we're within Dunnes stores, they're buying their full grocery shop, including if you're getting your cheese in Sheridan's or you're buying your meats in James Whelan, and then obviously your health food products in Nourish. But yeah, so that's allowed us to grow to a wider audience and to provide the health food, a wide selection of health food for Dunnes as well. So it's been a hugely collaborative relationship between the two. Like, we were approached by Dunnes and it was kind of out of the blue, and it was obviously taken as a big compliment that we were obviously doing something very right. And it allows us to get our products to more people, which is great.
I think the first Nourish store I went into was the one on Wicklow Street down off of Grafton Street. I mean, that was in probably 1999 or 2000 that I first came across that when I first got to Ireland. So I was delighted to find a local health food shop as well. As a retailer in Ireland, what are some of the challenges that retail businesses face from an energy perspective?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the high electricity bills are going to be your most significant one. I suppose, like what we were kind of looking at, improving our sustainability across the board. Like, there's many things that we've looked at and we've kind of tackled maybe the lowest hanging fruit first, packaging being significant one for us, obviously, that, and the reduction in, the supply chain as well, of trying to get local as much as possible. That very much started quite early for us, and our moving away from plastic in particular was something that started very early for us as well. I couldn't give you the year off the top of my head, apologies. But I remember that when I was working in the store as assistant store manager in that particular store, Wicklow Street. So it was very much before I was even in the head office team, and always has been really since the beginning. And then we have the likes of our zero waste in our Sandymount store. So it's, it's packaging free product as well, that customers can buy their nuts and seeds and grains and all of that without packaging. They can just bring in their own packaging and fill it from there. Outside of that, the big ones that was sort of on my to-do list were the likes of the lighting, which we had to fully replace, with LED lighting. That was, again, considered low-hanging fruit. It's like, right, well, we know we can do this first. So we did that, replacing our fridges with closed-door fridges, which are like 80% more energy efficient. So it's a no-brainer in terms of, impact to the environment and saving as well, both of which are very much on our agenda. They were kind of the easier ones. Solar obviously coming after that. Outside of that as well, it's not necessarily energy, but more environmental and sustainability was the shop fit outs, because they produce a hell of a lot of waste. So one of the things that we tried to do was to reuse equipment as much as possible. Unfortunately, we had closed down one of our stores during COVID, and our Liffey Street store, but we were able to reuse so much of that material, the shelving, the counter, and all of that when we did fit outs for new stores. So most of that equipment can be found in our Nookgrove store, which looks lovely, but it's, it's reused, upcycled, shall we say, sort of materials. So all of those were kind of factors for us. But as of the actual energy, probably bills being the number one there.
There's nothing wrong with upcycling and holding on to stuff. I think more and more people are realizing that that's one way where everybody can have an immediate impact, is holding on to clothes longer and sewing up the hole in the sweater instead of throwing it in the bin, or donating it to a charity store. I remember when you first called Solar Smart to inquire about solar energy, because we had this kind of really interesting sort of little teeny bit of shared history, in that I think you guys had just moved to your facility in Dublin 17, and you had actually vacated the premises that we were moving into. And you called and we put together a proposal. And then I immediately invited you to come in and see our solar system, because I knew we had gotten a couple of pieces of post. And so I knew that that's where you guys had been before. And I thought it must be something aligning in the stars that put us together. But tell me when and how and why you started to think about putting solar on the premises that at the time it was your new HQ. It still is, I assume.
Yeah. Yep, that's
the main office.
Exactly. That's where I am now at the moment. Yeah, it all came about, and it was great for me in my role, because being, responsible for the build of HQ and the setup of HQ was one that I was really, really invested in and enjoyed greatly, and was very proud to be given responsibility for. But yeah, so when we were doing the build in HQ, well, the whole reason for us moving to HQs. We were working out of the Wicklow Street store upstairs in the old Georgian drafty building, and we had started to outgrow it. People were kind of crammed in up there. It was insanely hot in the summer and incredibly cold in the winter, obviously. But yeah, so very inefficient building, but also just we were starting to outgrow that. So we had our warehouse in you're still there, obviously, in Clinshock, which was a great warehouse to start out with. Loved the estate and the setup there. Quite small, and we were starting to outgrow that space as well. So, but the whole idea with the HQ building was bringing our head office team from the city centre out here to Santry, and then also bringing our warehouse and our e-commerce online sales team together. So the three teams together in the one building and just having us be more together. So we moved in here late 2020 during all the drama of COVID, etc. So it definitely had its challenges. But once we got the build underway, obviously we were looking at the same principles, how we could do the build as sustainably as possible, and LED lighting, etc. The heating and ventilation was another big consideration for us in terms of using the heat reduction units and things like that to try and get more efficient systems, more efficient energy, replace the old boiler that looked like something from Stephen King's The Shining or something, and replace that with a modern, efficient boiler, etc., and things like that. So solar panels was always on the radar, but in 2020, we didn't quite have that capacity. And the build took quite a long time because of delays with COVID, etc. And we were opening some new stores throughout that as well. So I think 2022 is when we finally were like, right, we're doing solar this year. And we were in touch with another provider. Things didn't work out there, and we decided to shelve it because we heard about new grants that were coming as well. So then we were in touch with a few companies, including yourselves, which we didn't know you were in that premises, which was a really nice coincidence. And then, yeah, really, when we were invited down by Darren to Clinshock, it was just, we really didn't, even though we knew we wanted solar panels, and we were primarily coming at it from really more of environmental impact, and which is odd. I would imagine most businesses are not. They're coming at it as a financial impact predominantly, with secondary benefit maybe. I could be wrong there, but it was a bit more flipped for us. But obviously the financial is huge and a great benefit for people. So yeah, just getting to talk to Darren and him showing the system that you guys had installed there. And I probably was asking some very, very basic questions, but it was great to be, treated with that kind of respect and just be able to have our hands held along the way, really, because we were definitely novices in that.
Yeah, the NDMG grant was launched in July of 2023. And I think we installed your system in September of 2024 by the time we sort of got through the NC7 process. And is that right? You're almost coming up in 2 years? Yeah, we did that visit with Darren in the summer of 23, I think it was. But then obviously there was a lot of delays on our end, like that you guys helped us with greatly, because obviously not owning our building and just making sure the building itself had problems with the roof. So we had to make sure that everything was perfect for our landlord. But again, you guys were great with that. I would imagine there would have been a fair few providers that might have walked away from us, to be honest. It was not easy, but it was great to get there. Yeah. So we installed it in, was it in October 24? September, October 24. Just on the relationship with your landlord, you obviously lease the premises that you're in. Did you agree any kind of a reduction in rent or anything like that when you installed the solar? Because the solar system is going to be on the roof for, 30, 35 years. And obviously you get the benefit of the electricity reduction in terms of what you're using. You're making it on your roof. You're getting the benefit of the export credit for whatever it is that you're exporting to the grid. But at the end of the day, it is a physical asset that has actually improved the value of the premises. And I'm just wondering, I don't think I asked this before, but was there any kind of, financial incentive offered to you by the landlord? Or did you guys just decide we wanted this for our brand for environmental reasons, and the financial benefits, as you said earlier, were really just secondary?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm sure others would say, no, the financial benefits are primary, but definitely the latter there, agreement that we have with our landlord is really, it's one of those where it's, you have to give back the building in the way that you found it. So at its core level, because I guess from their point of view, they don't necessarily know what it is you're going to be doing to the building when you take it on. And they would look at that and they would, I imagine, see some things as assets and some things that, and not necessarily as that. Obviously, we'd look at the improvements that we've done, the ventilation system, the heating systems, the solar panels. But we did also ask Darren about the possibility of taking them with us and how that would go about, so we just wanted to make sure that we have all avenues covered. It's our investment. So we do have a good relationship with our landlord, but we also know that we may need to remove them.
Right. Okay. Got it.
We would be considering taking them with us.
That's kind of interesting because, you're obviously familiar with where we're located since you guys used to occupy that premises. But we went to our landlord and said, look, we're a solar company.
Yeah.
We almost have to put a solar system on our roof to show clients. And we wanted to, walk the walk. And we have a 10-year lease. So I just said, look, we're going to improve the value of the building. And you've got, investors that, want your portfolio to be more green, presumably, because we talk to property portfolio owners all the time. They offered us, I think it was a quarter of a year's worth of rent free in order to help us, put the solar panel on the roof. And thankfully, we don't have to take it with us when we go. So I think there are lots of different ways where you can kind of structure something that's attractive. So we're a year and a half basically into your professional solar journey with Nourish. Can you quantify the impact that it's had on the financial side of the business, but also anything else? Are you able to market the business in a more sustainable way? Or, I giggle because sometimes I pull into Lidl and there's always a sign in the car park that says this store powered by solar. And actually some of them are powered by solar, but some of them are not. But it is something that I think retail business, actually not just retail businesses, all businesses are kind of looking to promote themselves as more kind of climate conscious, sustainable, renewable, friendly. And you guys have that ethos, but has it allowed you to take it to another level or?
Yeah, it's a funny one because we're very critical of ourselves in terms of avoiding greenwashing and just that we would always see there's so much more that we can do. Now, we do obviously share with customers, but we're a little bit more liberal maybe than others. We like to have to be actually able to stand over the things that we're claiming, etc. So we probably don't shout about it as much as we could, definitely in comparison to other businesses. And I think that's really comes from a place that we just feel, we should be doing so much more and there is so much more that we can do. It's an ongoing, continuous journey really, because there's no end. We've definitely met a lot of the goals and we still have more to do for sure. So we haven't quite shouted about it as much as we should. But yeah, when we looked back on it, you had predicted us, and obviously I haven't spoken to you since about it. So when you set up the proposal, you'd predicted it would cover about just shy of 50% of our electricity energy. And yeah, when we looked to compare the year pre-solar and post-solar, it was actually 50% exactly of a saving. It definitely looks like it should. The whole system should be paid back in the 4 years, which again was the prediction. It looks all on target. So your prediction matrices or whatever it is that you use seem to be pretty spot on. So it's working quite well.
Maybe not for the last 4 months, but
True.
We had the worst winter in terms of solar. I have a colleague that we installed a solar system on her home, and I think it was sort of late October, maybe very early November. No, late October, I think it was. And I ran into her in January or something, and she said, we put that solar system on our roof and the sun hasn't come out since. And she's like, I'm not sure whether that was a bad idea or a good idea. But anyway, she actually texted me this morning and she was like, oh, I need to get my app working because it's such a beautiful day. She's like dying to see what her solar system is producing.
For our Nourish installation, it was September we installed it. And then for my own, I think it was, again, around the same October. So it's like just as you're coming into the darker months. But it's great when you get to that first summer and you can really see it. But even today, actually, I looked at it today and at home we were doing 90% and here we were doing 82%. So
I'm actually thrilled to hear that. From a business perspective, we had estimated using our solar modeling tool that the business was going to be able to cover about half of its electricity bill. And then whatever it's exporting, you're creating that credit.
Yeah.
And you're getting the credit, presumably, from your electricity supplier. So sometimes when you're doing that modeling, you always kind of wonder, is this really going to work out? But, I think hand on heart, we can look at our commercial and residential customers across the board and the estimates that are provided. The estimation system is actually a global database. It's called PVGIS, PV Global Information System. It's a place where pretty much anybody in the world can go and get irradiation data that's historical for, I think it's quite a long time. And you can get it by geolocation. So you just use your latitude and your longitude, and you can get a pretty accurate estimate of how solar is going to perform. Obviously, there are variances, year to year, depending on the weather. But for the most part, we're in our 6th year now, and we can track the estimates that we provide people, and it's pretty accurate. So it makes actually selling solar a lot easier because you can be really compelling about, hand on heart. I can tell people this is going to be something that's going to pay for itself in X amount of time, depending on what the starting electricity bill is. You got a grant. Yeah, because you said you waited for the grant and then put the solar system on. Is there anything that you would think of telling people that are thinking about approaching solar from a commercial perspective to consider when they're looking to put solar on their business? Are there any kind of things that people should be thinking about, decisions or factors that they should be considering?
Yeah, I think we probably spent a lot of time worrying about the planning of it and the intricacies and how it would all work. And I remember us even, getting to specifics about the days we chose and everything with you. We probably made it much more difficult for you guys operationally as well and scheduling. And really a lot of that was unnecessary because it was just so easy and straightforward and painless. I mean, I'm glad we did that. That's how you should go about doing it. It was definitely a lot less painful. It's a lot more straightforward. How it all works is just so simple and easy. Once you kind of, play around with the apps and stuff like the Huawei one we have in HQ, and I've got the Solus one at home, although I predominantly use the Zappy, but talk about that later. Yeah, they're very easy to use and intuitive and get the data from. And also how much of a no-brainer it is really as well. It's it just adds so much value in terms of financially, it really does. And obviously if you're interested in the environmental aspects, you're also going to get the benefit financially as well from it. That makes it just a no-brainer because it's a positive for the world and it's a positive for your pocket. So,
How long after we installed the solar system on Nourish did you decide, or did you start to kind of go, this could be a really interesting opportunity for my own personal home?
Well, when I was working with you and Darren and the team, I already had in mind, I was like, this is something I would absolutely love to do. Myself and my wife, Louise, had been very interested in, eventually we had always talked about getting an electric car, moving away from the petrol, but we wanted to, keep with it until we really had to move away from it. And then obviously the solar panels was really very much on our radar. When we bought our house in 2014 out in Howth, we had a long list of things we wanted to do, and they were obviously important things like, doing the garden and the new door and things like that, putting in a stove, wood burning stove, etc. But solar panels was definitely on the list. Kind of fell into it accidentally. I think we probably discussed it, but just when the car was going to cost $5,000 to repair, where everything was gone wrong, timing belt, new clutch, new sump, it was just insane what we were looking at. So we were like, right, okay, well, we just can't continue. It's kind of a strange one in that the EV purchase pushed us towards it sooner than we probably would have done. So we probably would be still looking at it this year, maybe. Obviously the purchase of the EV, and it's right, okay, we want to get the charger for the EV now so we can do that at home. That led us to be well, let's just do it all. It makes so much sense to do it together with the incentives that are there, the grants that are there, and just obviously dealing with yourselves as well for it. It was always the goal when we were doing the install in HQ is well, I definitely would like to learn from this and be able to do that in my own home as well.
And how do you like your EV?
Yeah, it's brilliant. We definitely wouldn't go back. I think we'd always been worried about the switch from a sense of, well, is the infrastructure there? It didn't really feel like it was. But I think it's come on in leaps and bounds in the last maybe 5 years, maybe even 2 years. So we purchased that, last year in want to say September, just before the charger and the solar panels. So that kind of pushes into things. But yeah, I mean, the EV, it's just amazing. It's perfect for the kind of commutes that we have as well. We haven't fully tested it. We have to do that now when we have a short trip booked in 2 weeks. We're like okay, let's see how long we can get. They've said that you're not a real EV driver until you pull into your driveway on like 1% or 0% or something. So we haven't done that yet. It's definitely a game changer. So we got a Renault Zoe, but it has a really decent battery as well for the car that it is, like 50 kilowatts.
That it is, yeah.
Yeah. You do sit up quite high on it because of the battery, but but it's nice.
I have to say, I also was really kind of hesitant about the EV thing because I drive so far. And the first year, definitely, I had some challenges. I was probably one of the people that got home at 1% or maybe less,
right.
in a bit of a panic. But now the fast car chargers are everywhere, like literally everywhere. I used to have to plan and I'm going to stop here and, add the extra half an hour or whatever. And now I just know where all the car chargers are, and I absolutely love my EV, and I charge it at home at night. And the amount of money that I've saved on diesel, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible how much less expensive it is. And actually, I walked into a shop the other day. I think it was in Apple Green, or I can't remember. It was a petrol station, and I was in Tremor over the weekend, and there was an SEAI sign in the, kind of like one of those sidewalk signs. It has like maybe sand or water or something to keep it up. It was sponsored by SEAI and I think the government of Ireland, and it had 3 rates on it for, filling your car. And one was like, filling your diesel, filling your car on petrol, and then what you would pay if you were filling an EV. And it was like, 80 euros and then 70 euros or whatever. The EV was 8 something. And it is incredible. Yeah, I'm sure people look at that sign, they go, no way, that can't be possible. When you charge your car on night rate electricity, if you have a night rate electricity, and then of course, if you have solar and you can trickle charge it with the excess during the day, it costs almost nothing. And if you think about how much you're spending on petrol or diesel, and then, of course, the thought of also polluting the environment, you just, like you say, I'll never go back. Absolutely never go back. I'll always, from this point forward, I will always, always, always drive an EV. Any other behavioral changes from installing solar, besides obviously the EV side, from installing solar in your own domestic environment?
Yeah, it does, because I suppose we usually use the Zappi app for checking, the solar and that, and our energy usage, etc., which is pretty accurate. We were kind of testing it there even on the weekend. We came home from a short walk and we were like, why are we using so much energy? And then we realized we had left the immersion on. And you're like, okay. And then you turn it off and it instantly drops back down. Yeah, even stuff like when the guys were in and we were trying to set it up and all that, just seeing how much energy the kettle generates and stuff like that. So you're a bit more disciplined in, making sure that you're not overfilling the kettle. You're just putting in what you actually need for that. Being able to see what you're using is helpful, to be able to see what you're generating. We would definitely be charging the car on a sunny day. So, it really makes sense to do that and charge it straight off.
For free.
Yeah, exactly.
I just think it's so empowering.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It's amazing.
It's so unbelievably empowering, although maybe not so good that you don't remember to turn the immersion off. But I think I actually have covered this in a previous podcast, but government solar was kind of lower on the list of retrofit works that they wanted you to actually put into your home, because they wanted you to insulate the attic and do the triple glazing and do the other things that would, kind of make your house warmer. And the domestic grant used to be only available if the BER after you installed solar was going to be a C2 or better, so that you do these other things first. You weren't starting from like an F or a D or something like that. And then in 2022, they removed that because they realized that putting solar on your roof and seeing how much electricity you're making and seeing how much electricity you're using when you turn on the kettle, when you turn on the electric shower, whatever the appliances are that are pulling electricity from the fuse board, they realized that actually the app was so educational in terms of how much energy people were actually using, that they removed that barrier and said, you know what, let solar be the first thing that people actually do, because once they have those behavioral changes that come from looking at the app and sharing the data with your friends and stuff like that, they realize, okay, people would then go, oh, wonder what would happen if I got my windows changed. Wonder how much I would save if I got my attic insulated or whatever. And so they totally flipped the philosophy because solar was so impactful in terms of the behavioral change that it brought about in people, and also people sharing the information with other people. And so they got rid of the BER minimum requirement so that more and more people could really avail of the grant. And now, you can't go anywhere without seeing solar panels. Particularly outside of Dublin, it's incredible. You drive around outside down in the country and you see solar everywhere. It's really inspiring. I think Ireland has done a tremendous job of motivating the people to make a change to go solar.
Yeah.
It's been a great journey for us to be on, actually.
Yeah, like it really seemed like something that was just, too expensive or just unobtainable to do, or just, too difficult a hill to climb up. And, you're going for the lower hanging fruit of things that you might sort of do in your house. But it really isn't we wouldn't have necessarily been able to afford it at the time without the grants. Like, there's no way. But it really just makes it so much easier to just
it's a no-brainer.
Pull the plug and do it.
Yeah. It's a total no-brainer. How important do you think it is for Irish businesses to start, like the move to solar on the residential side? It's really gained a lot of momentum and a lot of people have made the leap. But on the commercial side, it's a whole lot slower, probably because they didn't have any grants until just a couple of years ago. So that was part of the incentive. But in your thinking, how important is it for Irish business owners and operators to think about, reducing our reliance on fossil fuels? Is it something that you're starting to hear a lot more of in business circles or conferences or anything like that? Is there a shift taking? Because on the commercial side, it has taken a little bit longer for things to get moving.
Yeah, actually, that's a great last point there, just regarding the circles, because I'm thinking of various different summits we've gone to, like usually retail summits, because obviously being a retailer, like sustainability talks would have been something that you wouldn't have seen at all, even 5-6 years ago maybe, whereas now they're front and center and very much talked about. Yeah, the whole idea of a circular economy and all of that as well. We just can't survive with the linear model that we obviously have. So adopting more sustainable practices, absolutely huge. Reliance on fossil fuels, again, it's just not sustainable at all. So
there's a sort of yucky feeling associated with it now too, right?
Yeah.
It's just like with all the geopolitical issues and stuff like that, it just makes you think, we need to really disassociate ourselves from digging up the earth and burning stuff and putting it into the atmosphere.
You reminded me of something when you mentioned that, because it was actually at a talk that we went to, I think it was called SEAI, and it was specific retail sustainability sort of summit that they sort of laid out like the groundwork of it. They kind of did a lot of the work for us, which was great in terms of, we were able to then look at what we had done already and then see, okay, well, what can we do ourselves going forward? And we're able to take a lot from that. But one of the things that was huge, which is free from the SEAI, is doing their academy, which they have obviously online, and they have a business one. They also have a retail academy, which is brilliant because you just go through online. It's online free learning. You just do their models, and it tells you how to get your employees and your teams more engaged with it. Even basic things like getting them to switch off the lights after a meeting or whatever it is, and going through, like, there's other things that you can do, like having sort of like competitions and things like that, and to get engagement, because you want to obviously get everyone thinking about, energy efficiency and sustainability. But I definitely recommend doing that because it's literally free.
It's amazing. I've spent a lot of time on the SEAI website, but I didn't realize that they actually had like industry vertical specific kind of training tracks where you could go and get ideas on how to take your company with you.
Yeah.
That's a hugely helpful tip for people.
Yeah. It feels like they just have retail and then just business. I'm not sure exactly why it's specifically targeted that way, but
maybe retail is such a huge part of the, SME market, or maybe retail is a big part of the electricity spend maybe because of all the refrigerators. Who knows?
Yeah, that makes sense. And you are seeing it, like a lot of the supermarkets are doing that.
2 more questions and then we're done. If you were sitting down and having a chat with somebody who's thinking about solar, either from a residential or a commercial perspective, what would your advice for them to be? And then my last question is, what myth about solar would you put at the top of your list that needs to be debunked?
Well, I can kind of answer the 2 of them, I guess, in one maybe. I mean, the biggest myth is probably about the cost of it, or that, like, because when you actually go and look at it and look at the payback, like our residential payback, obviously we haven't got a full year yet, so we can't fully, look at that. We went with roughly 100% coverage. I think it was 102% coverage. We probably went, it's like, well, if we're going to get some panels, we may as well maximize it. You do see some houses and they have 2 or 3 and you're like, why? Why not just you've got the space. So we went with the 14 panels and yeah, that should be payback in 3 years. And obviously in our HQ, I think I said it already, but yeah, payback within 4 years. So like, I think it's definitely a myth, and one that we probably would have had is that, this is hugely expensive thing, but with grants and with how quickly it pays back, like it's a very inexpensive thing to do, really. Obviously, you're going to have to pay for it up front, but it's paid back so quickly.
Yeah. No, well, that's really useful, actually, because usually people say about the myth debunk is that solar doesn't really work very well in Ireland because everybody thinks it's always so rainy, but we actually have ideal weather conditions. But, but I like the fact that you've pointed out that, approaching or thinking about it, you think it can be very expensive, but when you see how impactful it is actually on the wallet of both the business and the house, it does make a really big difference. Yeah,
you do hear plenty of myths. I hear plenty of them about EVs and production as well. And you're like, I think it's quite easy for people to fixate on one little element and not take the wider view of the whole, which is where these myths, I think, gain traction. Yeah, I suppose advice really is that it I think the biggest, it probably is similar to what I said on one of the earlier questions, but just that how easy it is, painless. Like, obviously, I spoke about challenges that we had in our commercial installation, but our residential installation was just seamless. That was very quick and easy and painless. Literally just a day's work and then another day to do a few little extras. So, like, it was very, very painless. And then the commercial was painless, bar paperwork stuff that we had to go through, which was very specific to us, I would say. Yeah, I suppose biggest advice is don't be worried if you don't know a huge amount about solar. Like, that was our case. Like, we definitely didn't. We're very into sustainability and the environment and all of that. But really, when it came down to the technical specificity of it, etc., we very much had our hands held through the process and we learned from it. I'd say we learned the most from just playing around with the system and using the app, because it's just all the information is there. It's easy to see in that. Yeah, really just do it. No, it really is.
Else's slogan.
Yeah, we've already been talking to various neighbours and that as well, who were curious about the solar panels. So saying similar, like in terms of how easy it is and how, I think we said it already, but how much of a no-brainer it is.
Yeah. Thank you very much for spending some time chatting with me about this. It's been really interesting. Actually, just listening to kind of Nourish's background and journey towards becoming a lot more sustainable, renewable, circular. One thing I didn't know was the packaging side of things. Of course, that has to be huge. And it didn't even occur to me that that would have been something that you guys would have tackled early on. So
yeah, I mean, it's
about that.
It gets a bit messy at times, but our warehouse and our online store, they reuse all the boxes we get in, all the paper packaging and that. So you might get oddly shaped boxes and things, but it is, again, it's just, trying to reuse, because in the whole reuse, reduce, recycle, I think recycle is the one that everyone focuses on, but it really is it should be the last thing that anyone focuses on, or the bare minimum, because at that stage, it's a lot more difficult. Whereas if you're reducing and reusing, then you're really doing your best for the planet. Not to take away from recycling, of course, but just lesser focus maybe.
Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate you agreeing to be a guest and for sharing your journey and your wisdom for our audience. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I hope it helps.
It's been fascinating to hear the behind-the-scenes story of such an iconic Irish brand and their commitment to the environment. Huge thanks to Lloyd Hewson for sharing his insights with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and join us next time as we continue to dive into the stories behind Ireland's most interesting businesses. Thanks for listening. This podcast has been produced by dustpod.io.
Thank you for listening to our show today. If you would like to find out more about what we covered in this episode, you'll find notes, links, and more in the description area of this podcast. Do remember to press follow so you get the next episode automatically. Also, please do share with a friend who you think would find it interesting. Just tell them to search for Solar Smart on their podcast app. Our podcast today was produced by dustpod.io and brought to you by solarsmart.ie. Until next time, thank you for listening.